All right, welcome, Unsecurity Podcast listeners. Welcome to episode 173. The date is, I don't remember, but it is episode 173. And joining me back in the studio is Mr. Brad Nye. Say hi, Brad.
I'm back. I know. Thank you for covering there for a couple of weeks there. I had some personal stuff I had to take care of. So
Yeah, you're back in the saddle, and the poor listeners had to listen to me. I think as soon as I got to the point where they heard that you weren't here, they just, okay, I'm out.
we'll have to watch to see the numbers there and see if it dropped.
Right? Yeah, of course it did. Come on.
Did you at least have guests on, Evan, or was it just you?
It was just me. Yeah, because a couple times, Brad didn't know that he wasn't going to be able to make it until 15, 20 minutes before. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going. So then I just sat down and what I talked about last week, MFA or something like that.
Nice.
MFA attacks. I said, don't worry about it. It's not even worth your time. Just use crappy passwords.
Password 123.
We were just talking about that yesterday on my team about the recommendations for password length are still so low. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, so I went through. Okay, so that other voice you're hearing, for the listeners, is Eric Hanson. Eric is, I don't know. Every time I get a chance to talk to you, man, you're one of my favorites. Eric, we've had a lot of movement, meaning promotions and what have you, on the security studio on Team Ambush. I'm not security studio, FRSecure on the tech services team. What is your actual title today?
Offensive Services Manager.
Okay.
So I offend people, and I manage people who offend people, and it's great.
That's awesome. So for the people, red team, right? Mostly red team, and coordinating with blue team, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. Manage the penetration testing services, red teaming kind of stuff, and scanning and stuff too. Basically anything that's reaching out kind of at reaching out to try to find or do harm in some way. I mean, not harm, but, simulate harm, let's say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's cool, man. Well, it's cool to have you. You're also smart as hell. So that's fun on what we're going to talk about.
Yes.
Today.
I've convinced another one. We got it.
I know, man. I'm sometimes the easiest people to socially engineer are the social engineers, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about passwords. This week I decided, I don't know, I got squirrels, man. So I end up weird places. And one of those weird places this week was I'm going to change every one of my passwords. It's been a long time since I was taking an entire day and we're just going to go password by password by password. And I still have 208 passwords left. But you talk about, but some of those passwords I didn't realize I hadn't changed since 2014. A couple of them, I think, was the oldest I saw.
Yeah.
Crazy, man.
I'm still happy for, Password Manager because I just set it for the longest that whatever site accepts. That's just random. It's like 26, 30 characters.
Yeah, I would say I definitely have passwords that haven't been changed in a long time. I think we fall into that when we start using a password manager, right? And I know you guys and myself, we've been using for a very long time now, right? And so you get to that point, it's just like, I don't know, they're so secure, they're so random, they're not shared anywhere. It's like, it's a lot to change, right? It's a lot of work. It's a good idea too. I do change certain ones often. And then there's other ones that I don't, for sure. So
I was losing track because go ahead, man.
I was gonna say no, and I have MFA on everything that supports it. So I'm like, is it worth the hassle? That's a good question. What's your risk tolerance for it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it kind of dawned on me this week because I've been playing around with Spiderfoot, and so Spiderfoot is it's an open source OSINT tool. It's pretty cool. It's very flexible, well written. So I've been playing around with that. Well, there's like 200 different API. Or 200 different modules. So a whole bunch of APIs that I need to sign up for. And so as I'm going through and I'm creating, these APIs and passwords, that's when it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, crap, it's a pain in the butt.
I hate when I have those realizations that mean I'm going to have a lot of work to do.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And it's not like
it's
exciting work
good.
either.
No.
But yeah, and without a password manager, forget about it. There'd be no way.
I will say something that was a little exciting about password stuff was when I taught both of my younger children about password managers, about complex passwords, what kind of passwords they should use, things like that. Like the ones you're going to remember, what length they should be, how you should set up phrases, things like that. Some tricks to kind of make it memorable, but yet at the same time, make it very difficult to guess. I mean, as someone who cracks passwords all the time, right? And does that as part of a job, being very familiar with those types of patterns that people are going to look for versus what they're not going to look for, or would be a much, much more rare chance of finding. And the fun we had just coming up with funny phrases and stuff, and things like that, and kind of getting my kids to, understand kind of the complexity requirements for kind of breaking a password and things like that, and really educating them on that. It was really fun to watch their kind of reaction to it, kind of see how much fun they had with the idea of it. Such a simple thing that we take for granted. It's just like, not even just take for granted, honestly find frustrating a lot of people, right? It's like, I got to think of another password that's secure, that's memorable, like it's kind of daunting for a lot of people. For my kids, it was like an adventure, and that was really neat.
That's so fun when you see that. I remember my daughter, probably 4 years ago, she came home from school and was like, Dad, the teacher had everyone's username and their password for whatever the school app on the whiteboard. That doesn't seem right. That seems like it's not very secure. I was like, well, I've raised you right.
That's when you say, honey, have you ever been to a boardroom?
Right.
Awesome. All right. So one of the things we want to talk about today, the marketing teams. So I always tell the listeners that the marketing team gives us topics to talk about because I guess they know more about that stuff. So the thing to talk about today, and then we can scroll wherever we want to, is the differences between penetration testing, red teaming, and scanning. There's a lot of confusion in our industry. We use those terms, and it's not just here, right? Ask 100 people what information security is.
Right.
But what's the difference between scanning, pen testing, and red teaming?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's important that we, at least whenever I'm discussing these with people, I always lay it out up front. Like, this is what we're talking about, right? We've had a lot of situations in the past. I know, I've been on sales related calls or just helping clients out and things like that. And there's been, previous miscommunications that have caused misunderstandings on what the differences are. So it's always, I think, valuable to kind of talk about it. We've seen, especially 5 years ago, even not that long ago, right? 5 years ago, how often did we see someone selling a penetration test that was literally just like a scan, right? I mean, It was very prevalent, right, in the industry. Luckily, things are getting better and people are understanding better now, but it's still a thing. It's still common. But yeah, so we'll start, scanning, right? Vulnerability scanning. There's plenty of them out there, Nessus, Qualys, Nexpose, whatever else, right? It's an automated tool. It's going out and it's looking for very specific indicators that they've set up a database for being able to detect vulnerabilities, right? Especially when we're talking about external, it's a very accurate statement, I think. When you're talking about internal scanning, a lot of times I want to do like authenticated scans and actually go through and look at more indicators, that they can get access to as an administrator and say, hey, these patches are installed, so you're probably vulnerable to this. But it's looking for trying to be proactive and detect these types of issues and kind of get them fixed, make sure your patching management is on point and things like that, right? And to some level, it can detect certain configurations that are known bad as well. So some configurations will get picked up in these types of things, right? Some configuration issues. But that's kind of the extent of it. And I think that a lot of people maybe don't realize how important it is to have a human brain behind kind of the thought process of what's going on. Look at how many times in this industry, how many times have you seen an advertisement for automated pen testing or some new tool that's going to do it, right? And people talking about, I'm sure people have come to both of you, and I know they've come to me, and you guys are more prevalent out there and consult with more people than I do. And I'm sure many people have been like, well, what do you think about this automated pen testing service or tool or whatever? I've been thinking about introducing this $50,000 a year product into my environment so it'll automatically pen test me, right? And the fact is you can't, at least currently, maybe with some very advanced machine learning down the road and lots of input and stuff like that, maybe we'll get to a point where it's possible. I don't know, but like right now it's not. And it's the brain, it's the human, it's behind it, right? I can look at some information that comes up on your website and go, that shouldn't be there. A scanner has no clue. I mean, a scanner can try to look for things like a social security number format or a credit card looking format with a proper bin, but after that, it can't really detect something sensitive. An example I've used before when talking about things like this is like, we do a lot of reconnaissance, right? We look at people's files and stuff when we're doing penetration tests. I one time was going through like a hospital, right? Their external stuff, all the stuff that was publicly accessible, and there was no like HIPAA violation or anything like that. There was no like issues with medical information being out there, but there was a full playbook response to bomb threats and things like that. Exact playbook for how they were going to handle the call, everything they would do in that situation, to the line, to the script, and I was like, that's probably not something you want someone to be able to see. You want to definitely have that internally, but you don't want someone to know exactly how you're going to respond to everything they say if they're going to try to call in a threat on your organization, right? So you should remove that. And so like things like that, a scanner could never know that, right? It just can't know that. And it gets deeper than that, obviously. We're just talking about data and data classification there and stuff. But I mean, realistically, when we're talking about configurations, like I said, scanners can hit on some known bad configurations, but a scanner has no idea what a person should have in the way of access control, permissions, things like that, right? If you're in an internal environment and a user has access to a folder that has sensitive data in it, first of all, the scanner doesn't know that there's sensitive data in it. And second, it has no clue who should have access to that, right? But we have been around, humans have been around and been in workplaces and seen certain data and realized that maybe, the computer that's on the production floor shouldn't have access to the internal IT and HR documents, right? Or something like that. We know that shouldn't exist, and that's a configuration issue. And further, we can extrapolate data from those if we have access to them. Let's say we get access to documents like that. We find some kind of passwords. We can take those. We can use them to try to gain access to other things. We can look for password reuse in a sense that a scanner can't. Scanners aren't doing, password spraying and things like that. Most of what I'm talking about here is simple, but it continues to get deeper and deeper, more complicated. And that's when you start getting into that penetration testing, right? Is like when you put a person behind it, they're making choices about what to look at, what to scan, what to do with that information. Should that information be there? How can that information be used to then further attack, move laterally, do different types of things? Or, if we're talking about the external, just, what kind of things can we do to take advantage of these things? And additionally, you're looking to actually do exploitation, right? I've likened it a lot of times to imagine your vulnerability scan is having someone come out and take a look at your house and being like, is your house secure? But all they do is just check to see if you have locks on your windows and doors, right? And then a penetration test is like, yeah, but can I open the door anyway? Can I get through that? Is there a way to bypass that lock? Or is there a way to, or are the locks even locked, right? Can I just turn the knob and walk in, right? Like one's going to tell you a lot more information about the configuration of that home, the people in that home, right? That environment overall. And it's the same thing with penetration testing. It's having that human element gets you a lot more,
That's
logical.
Good to hear. Yeah. Good to hear, because that's the example almost identical to it I've always used. Think of a bomb scan as a home inspection, right? Just poking and kind of taking a high level look. But penetration test is somebody trying to break it in. Why would you start with that if the door doesn't even lock?
Right.
Well, yeah, and vulnerability scans are typically, right, they're written, most of them are signature based. Most of the things that will trigger will be a certain pattern is matched, right? You've got a certain registry, entry is present, a certain file is present, a certain version of a file is present. And so it'll look up in that database, okay, if you see this version of this file, it's vulnerable to these vulnerabilities, right? And that's essentially it. Sometimes there's some loops, beyond that. Whereas like a human, we can break the loop anytime we want to, like, okay, I see that this is really cool. Rather than me staying with this test that I'm doing, I'm going to go over here because I really want to dig deeper. It looks unusual.
Right.
Yeah, there's so much more creativity in a pen test.
I mean, it really is an art, right, Eric?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely to an extent. And just to kind of go further on the scanning stuff. I mean, yes, a lot of it is just signature. Did I see this and this? I will say that the scanners have gotten really good about detecting certain types of vulnerabilities, right? So
Mhm.
if it sees an SSH, let's say, right, port 22 open, it goes to connect to it. It sees a certain banner that indicates whatever, or maybe it just sends it anyway. But it'll do things like try to mess with the handshake, right? The SSL, TLS, handshake, and see if there's an ability to pop commands in, stack in commands and get them to execute beforehand, which some vulnerabilities in previous SSH versions would have. If it sees one of the versions of SSH that has the ability to enumerate users, it'll try to enumerate a basic list of users. Like, it does do a decent amount of stuff these days, but again, it's just the logic past that and what the impact is on that, or if there's more to it. Log, not log4j, sorry, proxy logon, about a year ago, right? Is that correct, or is it 2 years ago at this point? Honestly, I don't know. It was in like March 1 year, but like that's a decently it's a multi-step process to take advantage of that. There's a communication, and then you get something back, and then you take that and you communicate, and you get something back, and then you can then use kind of a authentication bypass to upload a shell and stuff like that, right? Well, the scanner does part of that, right? What it'll do is try to get those first couple communications back and forth to see if it gets something that indicates that worked. Some kind of piece of information, user ID or whatever it is, So it does do some of that, and it can kind of get into that, but it doesn't take it further. It doesn't see if there's any other kind of protection or mitigation in place, and then on top of it, what's the impact and where could you go from there, type of thing, right? So, yeah.
For sure. Now, what's the difference between this and red teaming?
So red teaming, I mean, in my opinion, and there's a lot of opinions and a lot of things out there, right? Because I've heard many people just refer to anything offensive as a red teaming engagement, right? And I would agree to some extent. I mean, it depends on how you're defining it, right? But at least when we have to define things in some kind of clear method to sell the service and to provide the service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I consider red teaming a type of penetration test. It's a certain methodology around penetration testing. And generally what we're talking about, at least when I'm discussing red teaming, is going from testing. So we know scanning is about detecting and kind of preventing, right? We're trying to find the things beforehand and do those things. And penetration testing is an extension of that. It's the same kind of goals with some exploitation as a goal on top of it, but to get deeper and to do more. Red teaming, the goals start to shift a little bit, and we're looking more at detection and response at that point. Right. And so when you shift the goal to detection and response auditing, if you will, or assessment, then that changes how you have to go about things. Right. So like if you're doing a normal penetration test, we'll take an internal environment for an example. Okay. So an internal environment in a normal penetration test, where generally these are a lot of times at least stemmed from some kind of compliance or requirements or something like that. Right. And so we have a certain amount of trying to get this done in a certain amount of time. It's very white box, right? So it's very like they give as much information as needed to kind of get the test done in an efficient amount of time and things like that. And they let everything through. They might allow list something on a host so we can continue or something like that, so that we can do it in a timely manner and get good information and get good coverage. On a red team, well, if we're trying to detect or assess their detection ability, then having them allow a bunch of things for us is not very useful, right? It's counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense. And so you take that part out. Having them give us a bunch of information that we would normally have to maybe potentially go grab ourselves and maybe generate some kind of indicators while we're doing that. That again is not a great thing. So when we talk about red teaming methodology, we're talking about more black box, right? Where the pen tester is kind of in the dark. Or they're going in like an attacker would. They got into a fresh network, or they're coming in from the outside, or whatever the vector is, and they don't have that information given to them. They don't have allowances. They don't have allow listing put in place. They don't have that kind of stuff. And furthermore, if you're in a pen test, a lot of times it's like, if you see us pivoting to a new machine, or you see that we got domain admin, we ask that you don't block that. You don't shut us down. You don't go close our program. You don't go change the password of that account. We just compromise that you noticed. Let it continue. Fix it all up at the end, right? On a red team, we're looking at not only their detection, but their response, right? And so it changes entirely. Their entire mode of operation is now different. And because of such, we have to be different. But we always say, like, if you see us, shut it down, block it, If you see us get a password or start using an account, you detect that, shut that account down, change that account's password, whatever you got to do. Get us out of your environment, right? Don't let us do things. There might get a stage. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, so from a timing perspective, is there a difference in timelines from a pen test to a red team?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, when we're talking about the methodology change that I've just discussed, we have to be quieter as the pen tester, right? As the red teamer, we have to try to be quieter, slower, and try not to get detected, try not to get caught, because that's going to end our engagement very quickly. And as much as I don't like working sometimes, I mean, we do love doing these things, and we want to provide as much value. And so if we just come in there like a smash and grab, like a normal internal pen test or something like that, and you just see all the noise, shut us all down, block us out, and we're done, it's like, well, then that wasn't very useful, right? That wasn't even realistic, and so I think there's a lot of people out there, just on that note, real fast tangent, but I feel like there's a lot of people out there who think that that attackers, real life attackers, when they get into your internal environment, they run a Nessus scan or something, and that's just not even remotely true, right? It's I'm sure many people have heard the term out there, living off the land, right? It's trying to use things that are not in any way considered to be malicious, using the built-in things and live off the land to do as much as you can without getting caught, right? And so you use as much of the built-in tooling, the built-in administrator. You try to emulate. Most good attackers are trying to emulate a sysadmin in the environment, right? Trying to do things just like they would, so that it doesn't. There's no anomalies, right? And anyway, because of all of that, to get back to your question, yeah, absolutely, it takes longer. It's a slower process. If you want to get, you want to get through it and kind of get some decent coverage and stuff, it has to be approached very slowly and very methodically. And because of that, generally they're, 2 to 3, maybe even longer. It depends on the type of engagement, what's being looked at. But it can be quite a bit longer.
Speaking of the time, I just remembered this. Did you see the quantum malware or ransomware Iced ID? It went from initial access to full ransom domain wide in 3 hours and 44 minutes.
I don't know that I looked into that one too much, or even but I would say
new.
that
it's new.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think we went from a time where everything was far more automated, much more like automated drive-bys, right? And if you looked at breaches, I'd say 10 years ago versus now, they were a lot faster. There was a lot less dwell time, in my experience. I mean, for the common breach, there's definitely some higher end breaches that were lasting forever.
What's funny, when you were mentioning, the attackers aren't running Nmap or Nessus, in your internal environment, and I thought back to the Target breach, in our investigation, and that was 2013, and the attacker did use Angry IP Scanner, and the attacker, and was loud as hell, and Target saw it.
That's not a quiet tool.
Yeah. No, and Target saw it, but didn't know what to do with it.
Well, and here's one of the issues too. I've seen this back in my experience before becoming a pen tester, when I was a sysadmin. When we'd bring other people in, or even sometimes myself, I would use things like Nmap or Angry IP to find things, right? It's just trying to see what's going on and see what I could see it on our network and things, right? Trying to kind of simulate a little bit. The problem is that sometimes the tools that even an attacker would bring in, so do the defenders, or so do someone else in that situation.
I mean, PowerShell, right?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, that's part of the living off the land thing, but PowerShell detection has gotten a lot better. But I mean, just going to Angry IP, you could even see some people in that environment saying, "Oh, well, we have a few people who use that to do certain things." Yeah. Right. And so maybe
especially when it's from a server too, that an admin, might normally be using.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, as an attacker in a situation, it's not common, but if we ever get to an IT or security person's machine and we see that they have tools installed, it's very exciting, right? Because now we can use those tools and no one's going to think much of it. We know now that like that box doing that is probably something that they see occasionally, right? You still don't want to go nuts, but you know that you're going to be able to slip under the radar a little bit easier with some of those things.
It makes me feel better that I didn't install the tools on my box. I had a jump box that had a separate login.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm always messing around with, I've got systems, and my favorite hosting place now is Vultr, VULTR.
Hmm.
So I have like 6 boxes there that I just keep messing around with, because on my own system, then people get mad at me. But that's where I'm running. I'm running Spiderfoot right now. I'm watching the logs. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So if you take down that box, then I guess, I don't know. We just blow it away.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, at least a lot of what we do, right? Like a lot of the stuff that the penetration testers do and stuff at FRSecure, I mean, we're working completely out of virtual machines, and a lot of times on machines that are not even going to be ever attached to the domain for that matter, right? Like just keep it all out. So it's not some extra noise in the environment. So, yeah.
Well, that's another thing that's become so much easier, because, I don't do much of this anymore. But back in the day, when you had to blow away your box and rebuild the box, it would take an entire day.
Yeah.
Now I can blow away this box and get another one up and running in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah. Just have that gold image if you do all the things.
Yeah. I mean, I just love it, because I keep screwing, because I'm a screw up anyway, so I keep screwing it up. I'm like, oh crap, blow it away.
Not to tangent too far, but have either of you heard of Cubes OS?
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
It's a Linux distro, and it the way it handles everything is that you have multiple cubes, basically multiple kind of virtual machines, right? That have templates and then application VMs off of those. And so you can build a template out and then not connect the template to the internet at all. And then essentially you spawn app VMs off of it that use the template as a, what's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word right now. Not changing state, right? Like those are static. Those are not going to change unless you actually go into the template VM and modify something. Anything from the app VM that uses it cannot modify the template that it's using, right? And then it has its own storage set off of that for whatever you're going to do as the user and stuff on that machine, right? The great thing about it is I can stand up one template for Kali, for instance, and then I could spawn an app VM for every single client. And then they're all completely independent and can all be blown away at any time. And anything that happens in any of them, if they were to get compromised, can't move up to the template and can't move to any of the other VMs. And there's like literally a VM for your networking interface, a VM for your USB interfaces, a VM for, whatever. There's a VM for the firewall. So and then they can inherit different networking from different VMs. So you have like a networking VM, a firewall VM that inherits from the network, and then your other VMs inherit from the firewall VM. There's also another VM for Tor network that inherits from the net one, but then you can then branch off of that and have different completely isolated systems and things. And that's what I've been using lately. And it's really nice because you can completely, if I have 5 different Kali boxes, let's say I have one for CTFing, one for work, one for some development stuff or whatever it might be, right? And various things. I can update all of them by just updating the template.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never met anybody who's using it. So you're using it? You like it?
Yeah, I'm using it. Yeah, that's cool. It presents some issues, some logistical problems sometimes where you're like, this doesn't have internet. How do I get this? I got to pull the file from here, then transfer it safely over to the other one. But there's tools built in to do all that. And this isn't meant to be a tangent where I tell everyone to get Cubes OS, but just on the sense of being able to completely blow things away, stand up new things, have things that don't affect other things, and update all of them and keep them all up to date. Because that's one of the issues I've had in the past is having multiple VMs in like my VMware instance on my Windows machine, is that I might have, on my Windows machine right now, I have, I think 4 Kali VMs, 2 Ubuntu VMs, a couple Windows VMs, things like that, right? I can't update them all regularly sometimes. And so it's like, all of a sudden I use this VM again 6 months from now, and I got to update a bunch of everything and make sure it's up to date and has all the stuff that I normally use. It's pretty nice for that kind of stuff.
Well,
that's cool.
I'm going to send my wife to you when she's pissed off that I've gone down a rabbit hole playing with that all weekend.
Yeah. And you will. But it's neat.
That's awesome.
That's very cool.
So one thing, now New Jersey, didn't we just do some good work out in New Jersey with the CTF? And can you tell me anything about that? Were you working on that?
It was so we did Jersey CTF from NJIT. They put it on. This is their second year running a CTF, and it was really neat. Just if anyone by chance from that place or who knows anyone out there is listening to this, I mean, they did a great job. I just want to say that right up front. Second year doing this, right? And they've got, not only did they do a CTF, but did like a little talk track with it and stuff like that, right? So they had a couple different speakers and stuff. And so, yeah, we did a sponsorship, to help assist with that and stuff. They had some great prizes and stuff and things like that. We also developed one challenge for the CTF. We had intended to develop more, but times are busy and we have jobs, but we did develop one challenge, kind of submit to them, and got some good feedback on that. I think some people really enjoyed it. I think 10 teams total out of, I don't know, a lot. 10 teams total solved it. And that was neat to see. And then on top of it, Pinky and I, we did a talk during their talk track. And so we did that talk. We just did, it's New Jersey Institute of Technology, I believe, NJIT, that's putting this on and with some other partners and stuff. And so a lot of the target audience, a lot of the people there, about half of the registered teams and half of the people attending were students of some kind, right? And so when we originally were discussing the talk, Pinky was talking about just doing like a talk he's done before about ransomware, kill chain and stuff like that, right? I mean, we were like, these are students. Let's completely change it up. We put it together like a couple days beforehand, and we decided to instead just talk about the industry, talk about getting into it, talk about the differences between red and blue team and how you can get involved with that and kind of what people should be looking at and give them some information about it, because a lot of people that are coming out of a security, degree or program, they've just been introduced to so many things and they have no idea where they want to go. They just know they think security is good and interesting and whatever, right? And so I think it was really beneficial. We had a lot of good interaction. Cool. We also did a couple breakouts on their Discord server where we just kind of hung out in there and let people come in and ask questions. And we had some, good questions, some good people come in and kind of ask them certain things. And overall, I think it was a great experience. And it was fun. And like I said, they did a fantastic job for, I'm not going to say like a lack of 2 years in, right? I mean, like, I'm not going to say they're inexperienced per se, but they did a fantastic job. Yeah.
It takes time to iron out all the wrinkles.
Exactly. I've seen things that are in their 6th year that didn't do as well. So,
well, kudos to you guys, because, the way that came about, I work a lot with the state CISO, Mike Garrity, and NJCCIC. And he turned me on to these guys, and then I handed it off to you guys, and you guys killed it, man. I mean, it was so cool to see, and just, we're sponsoring, these good causes, and I think everybody benefits. We benefit because, we're helping the industry, and that always comes back, in spades, and hopefully the people that, we're talking to, they're benefiting too. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I've always believed, and I know you believe, and you as well, Brad, I mean, I know that FRSecure believes, right, is that what good is any of this if we're not truly helping people, right? Like, and so 100%. Anytime we get the opportunity to just get out there and do stuff and help out and in any capacity, it just feels good. It's nice. Yeah. And talking to these people who are, at a large transitioning point of their life, very like now or soon, was really good to see, and really, I felt very fulfilling and rewarding. So
awesome. Good work, man. Thank you. Well, we're coming up on the end of the show. We're at about 30 minutes. We usually stop with shout outs. What do you got shout outs for, Brad?
Just everybody at FRSecure the last couple of weeks with going through some stuff, and just it's awesome. Everybody's willing to drop anything to help out and make sure you're taken care of. It's awesome.
We love you.
I love everyone. I'm not prepared for a shout out. I'll tell you that right now. But I mean, everybody at our company is great. I'll give a shout out to my wife. She's amazing.
There you go.
Is she in the room?
No, she's not. We have separate offices. So
I'm going to double down on that because I'm such a squirrel. I mean, every week for me, I'm all over the damn place. I mean, most people don't know what I do because I don't even know what I do. I mean, I'm just all over. And my wife has the patience of it's amazing. I don't know. She should have left me probably 20 times and probably stabbed me a couple hundred times, but she's still here and she still loves me. So it's like this never ending well of patience and love. And so, yeah, I'll give a shout out to that lady. She's good people.
Yeah. It's nice having someone around who puts up with the fact that I have, like you, a squirrel brain and will attack any new thing. I mean, I got the most ADHD brain or ADD brain that just goes all over the place. So
I still can't believe my wife stayed with me 19 years earlier this year.
Well, you have ADHD, you have really bad ADD or ADHD when you get really, really frustrated with yourself. Like when you're like, why the hell am I doing this? And you're like, oh, wait. And then you've got, oh my God. Like,
I always say, and I know we're wrapping up and now I'm on a tangent again, but I always say when it comes to that I know that I have ADD when I know that I need to be productive today. I actually spend an hour at the beginning of the day setting up controlled distractions so that if I distract myself, it's in a place that is a short hole. Right. So like I literally set up my distractions for the day because at least if they're controlled distractions and I know what they're going to be, then I won't be in a rabbit hole for 3 hours not getting something done. It'll be a 15-minute distraction and I can get back to work, So
that's a good tip, man. Well, Eric, I'd love to have you back again too, man, because you're fun to talk to and we'll do this regularly.
I hope so.
And welcome back, Brad. Listeners, go do good stuff.